in her role with the royal family. Has it changed your relationship?
It's hard sometimes because I sort of, I have felt sort of publicly bullied a little bit just by, when I read things.
At 41, Pippa Middleton is finally opening up about the truth behind her split from James Matthews, and it's not what anyone expected. For years, she was seen as the polished, graceful sister of the Princess of Wales. Her life looked perfect from the outside, the fancy events, the smiling photos, the fairy tale wedding. But behind all that glam, things were crumbling. When asked if it changed her relationship, she admitted, "It's hard sometimes because I have felt publicly bullied a little bit, just by, when I read things." When pressed further, she confessed, "It's been a bit difficult, yeah." So what really pushed Pippa to walk away from a marriage that seemed rock solid? And why is she speaking out now, after all this time? More than just Kate's sister, Pippa Middleton has always kept her personal life tightly sealed, especially when it came to her marriage to James Matthews. So when news quietly broke that the couple had divorced, the public was stunned. But what shocked people even more was when Pippa, usually private and composed, finally opened up and admitted the real reason behind the rumors. To understand Pippa's story, let's start from the beginning. Before the world knew her name, Pippa lived a regular British life in the small village of Bucklebury, Berkshire. She shared a home, a family, and a quiet upbringing with her older sister Catherine, who the world would later call Princess Kate. But even from a young age, it was clear that Pippa wasn't simply the other Middleton girl. She had a presence that was impossible to miss, bright, confident, and always a bit livelier than her older sister. She stood out, not because she tried to, but because she couldn't help it. Looking at the beautiful Middleton girls, one might assume they were born into affluence. But the truth is surprising. Pippa wasn't raised with the privileges of royalty or the wealth of nobility. The Middleton girls were daughters of self-made parents. Their father, Michael, was a former flight dispatcher, and their mother, Carol, was a flight attendant. Fortunately, the two built a successful party supply business that provided them a comfortable but still very regular life. They attended good schools, went on family holidays, and were taught to carry themselves with manners, humility, and a strong work ethic. There were no palaces, designer wardrobes, or bodyguards, until everything changed the day Kate Middleton's relationship with Prince William became public. At first, people were simply curious. But when Kate and William announced their engagement, every detail about the Middleton family became a global fascination. Suddenly, Pippa's name was in newspapers and blogs. Even though she hadn't sought the spotlight, just by being Kate's sister, she became a public figure, without any title, training, or choice. But Pippa didn't shrink from attention. When Kate married Prince William in 2011, Pippa stepped into the spotlight. As maid of honor at Westminster Abbey, she wore a simple but stunning white dress that fit her perfectly. She wasn't trying to steal the show, but she did, instantly. The moment went viral. Fashion editors, gossip sites, and everyday viewers around the world fixated on her. That one appearance turned her into the internet's new obsession. She became the face of elegance, poise, and understated sex appeal. In just one day, Pippa Middleton became the "it girl" of 2011. Her dress was the most searched fashion item of the year. Her photo circled the globe. Even though she wasn't royalty, she had become just as famous, if not more so, for a time. From that moment on, life was never normal again. The fame that found her didn't knock, it burst through the door. Paparazzi camped outside her home. Journalists combed through her college years. Tabloids tracked her gym visits and analyzed her outfits. Fashion bloggers wrote entire articles about her shoes. Her friendships, social life, and even her daily routines were dissected. Pippa hadn't asked for fame, but it had consumed her life. While the attention was flattering in some ways, it also took a toll. She tried to embrace her new reality with grace, but nothing about it came naturally. Unlike royals, she hadn't been trained for life in the spotlight. She had to figure it out in real time, under constant pressure. She smiled for cameras and kept her public comments short, trying to preserve some privacy while remaining polite. But privacy became a luxury she no longer had. Her dating life, once private, became headline news. Her relationship with Alex Loudon, a former cricketer, was quickly picked up by gossip magazines. What had been a quiet romance was now front-page content. Cameras followed them during strolls, arguments, even vacations. Every moment was captured, judged, and dissected by strangers. Pippa later admitted she had faced an overwhelming level of intrusion. After her breakup with Alex, the press only intensified its pursuit. Any man she was seen with was declared a potential husband by the media. When she began dating Nico Jackson, a young and successful stockbroker, the attention only grew. He looked the part, stylish, wealthy, and confident, and many assumed he'd be the one. They appeared together at public events and traveled frequently, seeming comfortable in the public eye. But the relationship never fully clicked. The public wanted a fairy tale, but real life didn't play along. In the eyes of the media, Pippa had become part of a strange romantic narrative. Alex represented comfort and the familiarity of her pre-fame life. Nico symbolized ambition and modernity, someone who fit the world she had been thrust into. And then came James Matthews. James wasn't new to wealth or public attention, but he carried himself differently. They met on the Caribbean island of St. Bart's, where his family owned a luxury hotel. He was calm, grounded, and uninterested in fame. Choosing James wasn't just about love, it was about seeking peace, normalcy, and a quieter future. But choosing James was only the beginning of another unexpected chapter. When Pippa and James went public in 2016, the media frenzy reignited. After years of being labeled the world's most eligible woman, Pippa appeared to have found someone steady, wealthy, and ready to build a life outside the royal bubble. The press latched onto the story, and within a year, they were married in a lavish ceremony. From her intricate Giles Deacon lace gown to the elegant floral arch framing their vows, every detail screamed luxury. But behind the perfection was a reality only Pippa knew, and now, she's finally telling her side of the story. But while the wedding made front pages around the globe, their relationship was quietly complicated from the start. It was an almost royal wedding as Pippa Middleton, Britain's most famous bridesmaid, became a bride. Roles were reversed that day. Pippa walked down the aisle with all eyes on her. James Matthews wasn't a stranger to success. A former race car driver turned hedge fund manager, he was reserved and preferred an extremely private life. His wealth came from hard work and smart investments, not fame. He enjoyed quiet dinners over red carpets and rarely gave interviews or appeared at public events unless necessary. Pippa, on the other hand, had lived in the public eye ever since her sister married into royalty. She wasn't chasing fame, but she had learned to live in it. Photographed at high society events and mingling with fashion elites, she knew how to work attention to her advantage. According to sources close to the couple, they were like two very different people trying to build a life in the same house. Where James leaned into routine and silence, Pippa brought energy, style, and sparkle. She was still known for that unforgettable white Alexander McQueen dress from Kate's 2011 royal wedding. Even years later, designers credited her with reviving the trend of sleek, minimalist bridal party dresses. That single moment opened doors. She wrote a lifestyle book titled Celebrate, ventured into event planning, and dabbled in branding. Though not all her projects were hits, they kept her in the media spotlight. That constant attention, however, came with a price. Pippa was no stranger to fame's downside. Shortly after the royal wedding, paparazzi snapped bikini photos of her during a private family holiday. The images flooded tabloids, sparking outrage and legal battles. The Middletons fought back, and won. But for Pippa, the damage was personal. It was one of the first times she felt the true invasiveness of fame. She later admitted the experience haunted her for years, even as she continued smiling for cameras at charity galas and fashion week parties. By the time she married James, the glamour still sparkled on the outside, but cracks had already started forming beneath the surface. The couple lived in a multi-million-pound townhouse in West London, surrounded by luxury. But slowly, their paths began to drift apart. James didn't want cameras near their doorstep and avoided social events where Pippa was expected to shine. At first, Pippa adjusted. She pulled back from the press, said less, and stayed low. But it wasn't long before she returned to what she loved, attending events, giving style interviews, and getting photographed in outfits that set trends. They started living separate social lives. And the worst was yet to come. James stuck to private clubs, golf courses, and business meetings. Pippa remained in high society, showing up at Wimbledon, attending royal events with her sister, and supporting health and fitness causes. Even though they were still technically together, their public appearances as a couple faded. There were fewer photos, fewer outings, and growing questions about their whereabouts. Fashion insiders began to notice a shift in Pippa. Her once bold dresses and bright colors gave way to neutral tones. Her style grew quieter, less expressive, some said mature, others said lonely. Whatever the reason, something inside her was changing. Her confident, visible presence seemed subdued. Public appearances drastically declined. She never spoke openly about the change, but people noticed. The woman who once stood confidently beside royalty now walked solo into events, often avoiding red carpets altogether. And while nothing scandalous ever emerged, no cheating, no dramatic fights, tension simmered. At the heart of the issue was a lifestyle divide that compromise couldn't fix. Pippa lived in a world that demanded visibility. James had spent his life avoiding it. She needed the freedom to be seen and heard in places where cameras flashed and style mattered. He needed peace, space, and privacy. Their worlds no longer balanced. When they tried to meet halfway, it felt strained. Friends noticed them leaving events separately. Vacation photos disappeared. In interviews, when asked about married life, Pippa grew vague. What many didn't realize was that Pippa was silently struggling, not just with her marriage, but with the feeling of being caught between two lives, the one she was born into and the one she had stepped into through fame and family. That internal conflict never disappeared. It sat quietly at the center of their home. By the time whispers of divorce began circulating, most had already sensed something was off. And as rumors spread, more cracks appeared in Pippa's carefully curated public image. So how did Pippa handle the growing pressure in her marriage? That's exactly what we're about to explore. Pippa Middleton has never had the luxury of being ordinary. Long before her sister became a future queen and her name started trending worldwide, Pippa already knew the pressure of being perfect. As the middle child between two accomplished siblings, Kate above her, James below, Pippa often felt the weight of comparison. Kate was graceful, polished, and admired. James was entrepreneurial and grounded. Pippa had to find her own place. From a young age, she felt the pressure of high expectations. The Middleton home was not just supportive, it was ambitious. Her successful parents ensured their children were educated, well-spoken, and poised. Academic excellence and social intelligence were emphasized. Pippa caught on quickly. She didn't just want to keep up, she wanted to shine. At the University of Edinburgh, she studied English literature and quickly gained a reputation beyond her studies. She became a connector, someone who joined the right clubs and formed the right friendships. After graduation, Pippa took roles that positioned her in London's elite circles. She worked in luxury PR, high-end event planning, and brand partnerships. But ironically, her real breakthrough wasn't career-based, it was born out of public fascination. By 2008, Pippa had been named the UK's top society singleton. It wasn't just a gossip column title, it was a sign that people were watching her more closely than even royals and celebrities. Just 4 years later, she was included in Time's list of the 100 most influential people in the world. That recognition didn't come from royal blood or marriage, it came from the way the public connected with her style, her presence, and her story. Still, no matter how far she climbed, there was always the shadow of Kate. That royal link never faded. Every headline about Pippa included a mention of her sister. Every achievement was held up against the backdrop of Buckingham Palace. Even when she earned major press or launched projects on her own, the credit often felt shared. Success never quite felt fully hers, it always seemed borrowed. This need to be seen for her own strength seeped into her marriage as well. Behind closed doors, she wanted James Matthews to share the spotlight with her. She wanted to replicate some of the public fascination Kate and William enjoyed. She hoped James would warm up to public life, attend events, and become part of her public image. But James wasn't interested. He didn't grow up preparing for press conferences or parades. His world was business meetings and quiet weekends in the country. The more Pippa leaned into her public image, the more he leaned out. The pressure wasn't just in the public eye. At home, she was raising 3 kids, managing a husband who wanted no part of fame, a family legacy tied to royalty, and a name she had to protect. The world expected her to be the perfect wife, the perfect sister, the perfect mother, and the perfect brand. But something had to give, and the part that gave was Pippa's sense of peace. She had poured so much into maintaining the polished surface that she left no space for herself. Her silence spoke volumes. She never lashed out at the press or gave emotional interviews. But her retreat from the spotlight, her shift in wardrobe, and her slower pace told the real story. She was tired, not just physically, but emotionally. Perfection had been the goal for so long, but now it felt suffocating. This chapter of her life was about more than marriage, it was about identity. Who was she without the Middleton name attached to royalty? Who was she without James by her side? Who was she if she stopped performing perfection and simply lived? These weren't questions she could answer in public, but they were questions she had finally begun to ask. As the cracks in her picture-perfect life became too clear to hide, Pippa started making small but bold decisions behind the scenes. We're about to explore the decisions that led her to walk away from everything that once defined her. This story is worth hearing. James' absence from their public life together wasn't just a phase, it became a pattern. He didn't show up at important events. He wasn't seen walking hand in hand with Pippa in Chelsea. He wasn't even present at gatherings where family attendance was expected. The message was clear, even if no one said it out loud, they were growing apart. Then something unexpected happened. Paparazzi captured the couple vacationing together after a long period apart. Photos of them relaxing at a luxury villa made their way online. It seemed like a reset, an attempt to reconnect in private. But even in those images, something was missing. There were no shared glances, no visible spark. It looked like two people traveling parallel paths, not a couple rediscovering one another. The island getaway offered a pause, but it didn't offer healing. As if things weren't complicated enough, family tension began to build. While the public didn't immediately notice, those close to the Matthews family knew that something was off between Pippa and Vogue Williams, James' sister-in-law. Vogue, a TV presenter and media personality, is married to Spencer Matthews, James' younger brother. The two women were never openly hostile, but subtle tension simmered. There were clipped comments, icy smiles at family events, and quiet jabs during interviews. Vogue's podcast became a platform where vague stories about someone being full of themselves were shared. Insiders claimed these were aimed at Pippa. It wasn't direct, but it was enough to stir whispers. Vogue's followers took note, especially when she made comments about royals and phony perfection. These weren't just seen as digs at Meghan Markle but as sideways shots at Pippa too. For Pippa, the pressure grew slowly but steadily. While she tried to maintain the Middleton image, the Matthews side of the family was less concerned with appearances. Spencer and Vogue lived openly, weren't afraid of media spats, and didn't shy away from controversy. Pippa, once in control of her public narrative, now found it slipping away. Her marriage, her image, even her carefully measured silence were all being shaped by others. There was no official statement about a separation or divorce. No confirmation, no legal filings. But the signs were everywhere. Pippa started attending weddings alone. She showed up at charity galas without James. Her style changed. She stepped further away from the cameras. It was a quiet collapse, the kind where nothing is announced, but everything is broken. It was a strange fall for someone who had risen with such precision. Pippa had worked hard to build her own identity, not just as Kate's sister or the girl in the white dress, but as a mother, a businesswoman, and a public figure in her own right. For a time, it all held together. But slowly, the gap between the public image and her private life widened. She remained a devoted mother, engaged in charity, and still appeared smiling when needed. But the woman who once captured global attention was now fading into the background of her own life. No courtroom declaration or tabloid headline confirmed it, but everyone could sense the truth: the marriage was likely over long before anyone said it aloud. Some fans held on, believing silence meant privacy, not breakdown. But silence can be louder than truth. In Pippa's case, it echoed. Yet she stayed composed, at least on the surface. There were no outbursts, no exclusive interviews, no messy tabloid drama, just a slow, graceful disappearance from the public eye. It was a quiet transition toward something new. Whatever lies ahead, it's clear she will meet it with the same quiet strength that carried her this far. While the headlines never screamed divorce, the truth wrote itself, calmly, silently, completely.